Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we are the leading experts in helping small business owners to win corporate clients. And this is our weekly show where we talk to business leaders and entrepreneurs who are using their platform in order to drive positive change in the world. And I could not think of a better topic right now than the one we're going to dive into this hour. Talking about people using platforms to change the world, then talking about the world of speaking and how you can get out there as a speaker in order to deliver your message to more people. But before we get into that topic today, just a couple of housekeeping items to cover off here at the top of the hour. The first is if you are joining us at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, then we are live. And we certainly encourage you to participate and be part of the program with us by sharing your comments and asking your questions. So please don't be shy. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're joining from. And as we get into the content today and talk to our amazing expert, our amazing guest, I have no doubt that you are going to have lots and lots of questions for her. Also, if you're not already, be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And most of all, make sure you connect with me personally on both Instagram and on Clubhouse, where we're going to be launching our new club very soon. And last but not least, next week we will be on hiatus for spring break, but I promise we will be back. 2 Wednesdays from today with an incredible guest who is truly owning his backyard and transforming the way that those in his city go about doing business and connecting with each other. So it's definitely an episode not to be missed. But now for today's topic, which is all about the world of speaking and what's in store for those of you who either already are out there speaking or you want to expand the number of stages that you are winning this year in 2021. Our guest today is the incredible Mary Lue Peck, who is the president and CEO of the National Speakers Association, a nonprofit organization equipping professional speakers to run better businesses and become better speakers. Prior to NSA, Mary Lou was an executive with the Institute for Supply Management, the oldest and the largest supply management association in the world. And today, I would argue she is at the helm of the best speakers organization in the world, the National Speakers Association. So please welcome to the show today, Mary Lou Peck. Mary Lou, it is so good to see you.
Thank you for having me on.
So we are huge fans of the National Speakers Association here at the Corporate Agent. Before we get into all the amazing things that you all are doing and what's in store for speakers this year, let me just start by asking you the question of the hour, which is, what is the movement that you're leading?
So at NSA, our mission is to empower professional speakers to thrive in influence.
Which is, I would say, so important today as we all try to cut through the noise and make sure that we are shaping the world around us. For those of us who aren't familiar with NSA in this community, which I'm going to, if you are in my tribe, I'm going to say, how do you not know about NSA? But for those who are finding this interview who may not be as familiar as others with NSA, tell us a little bit about the organization, what it does, who makes up its membership, and the role that you all play.
Sure. So we were founded in 1973 by Cavett Robert, who was a professional speaker. And we were founded under the principle of let's build a bigger pie because the world needs speakers. So we provide tools, resources, education, and access to a community to help professional speakers build a better business, be a better speaker. I boil it down to what we get to do is we help solopreneurs do what they love to do for a living, which first and foremost is amazing. And then second, what they do is they impact world change.
They absolutely impact world change. I would say that some of the folks who've most influenced my way of thinking was because I had the privilege of sitting in an audience and hearing them speak. In fact, my business wouldn't exist, Mary Lou, if I had not been sitting in an event hearing a speaker speak. So, for my own life, I know how much, that has shaped us. This past year, though, has
Mhm.
been, I mean, the organization was started in the 1970s. A lot's changed in the speaking industry decade after decade. Nothing like what we saw this past year.
Mhm.
When you look at some of the biggest transformations and pivots that speakers have made this year, what stands out to you?
So I think the the speakers that have been really successful and really transformed through this, they took a step back and looked at like what value do they provide and how do they provide that value. So speaking in person at an event is a delivery mechanism for their product, which is their intellectual capital, right, and their inspiration. So those that really fine-tuned what value they serve and then looking at different delivery mechanisms. And over the last year, obviously, that involves a lot of virtual. And we've seen everything from, um, building out a small studio in your house or making your office appropriate for virtual to building out a large studio in your house. And it just depends on what your brand is and what your value is as to what level you need to do. So adapting to virtual delivery and then also really diversifying income stream because professional speakers, they're not just keynote speakers. They are people who deliver expertise eloquently as a business. So you can do that through consulting, training, coaching. Then there's the deep dive workshops, high intensity, high content workshops, as well as keynotes. So we've seen a lot of people also make sure that they are diversified. So basic business practices.
Yeah, I think that element of diversification is so important. Those who headed into the pandemic, who
Mhm.
were already a bit diversified, I think had a little bit of an advantage there. We don't
Mhm.
always like to take our vitamins, though, right
Yes.
ahead of time. Humans are, and I hope that's one of the things that comes out of this, Mary Lou, is that idea that I had been sort of jumping up and down for the last few years saying to folks, look, if you don't know how to, generate business and you're just
Right.
counting on business coming to you, the day is going to come where something happens and the market's not going to be as great and you're going to wish that you had built that muscle. And so
Mhm.
I hope that diversification piece is something that lasts. Like, I feel like that's one of our lasting silver linings out of all of this, yes?
I agree with you. I think there's that. And then also just financial management, right? And recognizing, especially in the world of professional speaking, often it's passion driven. So you have a passion and you want to give back to the world. Our members, they are givers, they want to give back. But you also have to look at it like a business. So, what is your unique value proposition? How are you differentiated? How do you, as you said, break through the noise? How do you get that pipeline of business? So if you're a keynote speaker, for example, some people think, oh, well, companies don't bring back the same speaker year after year. First of all, some do. Second of all, there are engagements in between as we really focus on the conference model. When we talk about some of the opportunities in this, we've known for the last decade the conference model is broken. Nobody wants to be lectured to for 8 hours a day and then drive through an exhibit hall at lunch, right? And try and meet with
Oh.
partners really quickly. People need that drops of learning throughout. So as speakers, it's I can come in and speak, and then quarterly virtual sessions to make sure and reinforce the learning and make sure your people are actually implementing, right?
Yeah, it's such music to my ears hearing you say this. And by the way, you have a lot of love here. Sylvia, who's here, says she's been an NSA member since 2001, which is amazing, from the DC area. And some folks from Rhett, it's good to see you here as well from Los Angeles. I couldn't agree with you more about the events industry and the conference industry, certainly having some flat tires and some
Mhm.
areas of the vehicle that need to be tuned up. I was a trade show manager in the defense industry. Well, it was one of my responsibilities under managing the marketing for a big division. and,
Mhm.
just kind of watching the amount of money that went into the conferences and how little engagement opportunity
Mhm.
there really was. And, you're kind of like dragging people in the aisleways of the trade show into your booth, trying to like get them into sales conversation. So it doesn't feel good when you're that piece of meat sort of walking through or sitting there all day in a conference. I think one of the things NSA has done really well this year is eat your own dog food, as they say, because you all really changed your own models of events this year. You used that as an opportunity to do that. What were some of the pivots that you made as you moved to a virtual environment?
Sure. So, for us, when we look at who we serve, professional speakers. It was really important for us to lead the way on virtual events. Plus, it's a personal passion to like change the way conferences are being delivered because they just don't add the value that they could add. So, one one thing that we had to do that really just completely changes the frame of thinking is when you're building out a schedule, you want to build it for the virtual environment, right? So events really, I think hybrid is here to stay. When you're building out the schedule, oftentimes what in the past was you build it out for the in-person with the 30-minute breaks in between, the 2-hour lunches, and things like that so that they can network. Well, that doesn't translate well to the virtual audience and the virtual attendees, and then they don't stay engaged and they don't feel like they're part of the conference. So that would be one of the things. Second is you've got to have a really good platform. So in the past, when it moved to hybrid, all they did was live stream. And so you can jump in and watch a live stream. That's not a hybrid experience, that's a live stream experience. So having a platform that allows for those hallway conversations where you can get together in small groups and start conversations, allowing for interactions with our sponsors and exhibitors who are often overlooked at events and taken for granted. Yet, sponsors and exhibitors are the people that make the conferences possible. So, how do we integrate them more? One of the other good things that came out of like silver linings when we look at this past year is really a recognition for partners and suppliers and a reinforcement that you want to have the relationships before you need them. So for us, we were really, really lucky. We had great partners with Marriott hotels, Video West for our AV, Socio, and then our sponsors and exhibitors, as you know, provided a lot of really good information, good suggestions that we were able to incorporate. And we're just going to continue getting better and better. So we're looking at it as iterative and we're going into it with a mindset of we're going to try different things. We're going to see what works and tweak from there and pulling in our partners.
I think that's such a great thing that you just shared. Hopefully, you don't get mad at me for sharing this. So we are a partner of
Mhm.
NSA. We've sponsored quite a number of your events now in a row. We absolutely love it. You're a favorite organization to team with, and you all, right when the pandemic hit and the live events that some of us had already been in talks with you about being a part of, you pulled us together and talked to us about what are the kinds of things that would keep us engaged and that we would look for in our ongoing relationship. So you moved right into a voice of the customer type of a conversation. And obviously, I always say to my clients, like, you've got to be careful when you do that, because just because you ask for input doesn't mean you can take all of the
Right.
input. So you have to certainly set boundaries and expectations. But just to pull everybody together like that, that spoke volumes to us in terms of the value of the long-term relationship. And so many folks just walked away from things and didn't keep those
Mhm.
lines of communication open. So you guys really did a good job with that. You've also done a great job with your technology. At the event we were just a part of after our session, we
Mhm.
had an incredible platform where people could kind of step into a room with me. It was really cool to kind of see them walking across the screen and kind of step into a conversation with us. And the engagement was absolutely through the roof, Mary Lou. Um, you just said you think hybrid is here to stay. What
Mhm.
else do you think is on the horizon? When you look, you obviously have your ear to the ground. So when we look forward at the next 6, 12, 18 months of events, What are
Mhm.
you hearing, and what are your predictions about where the event and conference world is going?
So I think a couple things. The state of vaccinations is going to really affect timing of anything related to events. Obviously, I do think there's a pent up demand. Human beings are not meant to be socially isolated. And that's frankly what we've been for a year now.
Yep.
So I think as soon as we get a little bit of a comfort level, I think we're going to see a flare up in the number of people that want to attend events in person. And then I think it'll level back out. Um, I do think that people over the last year have learned that virtual delivery is actually a viable option. And there's a difference between virtual and in person. So I would expect that the in person conferences will start to look different. First of all, I think they're all going to be hybrid. But if I'm just going to get up and lecture to you, you don't need to be in person for that. I could send that out ahead of time as a digital resource. But if we want to do more social learning, so uh, networking, tabletops, meet the pros, where small group of people get together and talk about lessons learned or mastermind, that really doesn't work as well virtually, works so much more better in person. And making sure there's plenty of networking opportunities and social. I think that's another lesson learned from this whole pandemic is the value of relationships, not just in business, but personal as well, and our need to be able to connect with other human beings. So even when we're looking at the virtual side of events, more more spots where we can actually see each other, like Zoom, versus just watching something being lectured to.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So then for those who want to book more speaking
Mhm.
opportunities, would you argue then that as part of their applications now, they need to be talking about more experiential? Because I think so many
Yes.
speaking, it's always, okay, this is your topic, and then here are the learning objectives, and this is what people are
Mhm.
walking away with. And it's almost like even the applications need to change. What they're asking for needs
Mhm.
to change. And so far, I haven't actually seen, I'm still seeing, I just did, I would say in the last 2 weeks, 5 speaking applications, and the forms look like the same ones I've seen for years. What are your thoughts about that changing? And should speakers just take it upon themselves to say, and this is what I'm doing to make this a highly engaging in person activity?
I think in the beginning, speakers may have to take some of that on themselves. And that's because just like the speaking industry, like the events industry was decimated. And so you've got meeting planners that don't have the support that they used to have, and they're doing like 2 or 3 times the workload, and they're just inundated right now. Um, I would envision in the future that the forms do change. The other thing that's interesting about the hybrid model and what we're trying to what we coach our speakers on is you can't ignore the in-person audience, but you certainly cannot ignore the virtual audience. So you have to be, it's almost like a talk show format where you're
Mhm.
talking to the virtual audience and then including the in-person audience. And that is a skill and an art. So for people who want to get speaking gigs, update their sizzle reel to include virtual presentations. Make sure their website talks about how they've delivered
Right.
hybrid, virtual, and in person, and really explain like the difference between a hybrid and virtual because it is different. So demonstrate that understanding. And to your point, anything that's in person is it's what is the experience and offer some follow up. Hey, and because we want to help people implement learning, I will give you this 90 days after that you can send to your attendees. Meeting planners love that because it's a boon for us. And it's really good for our customers because that goes into that reinforcing the learning, right? So before it used to be, hey, if you promise to promote us and if you have a big following, then yeah, we'll find a way to book you. Now it's how do we get the best experience for
Wow.
our customers?
That's incredible. I'm like writing my own notes in the middle of this. We actually are in the process of updating our sizzle reel to show, as you know, we hosted a virtual event. So we
Mhm,
have now, me sort of leading an event for 800 people, virtually from our soundstage. We also want to put in Zoom because it's very
mhm.
different when I'm up on a stage with professional cameras and, $60,000 in audio visual equipment
Yes.
versus if I'm sitting at my desk with, the way that I am today for the show. We actually have been seeing more and more, Mary Lou, conference producers and organizers ask for samples of you presenting virtually.
Mhm.
How important is the equipment, would you say?
I would say it's important. So green screens, stop using them. They don't work when it's so distracting if you're talking and then your arm disappears. I'd rather have a nicer just office layout, just a professional layout. Um, you've got to have good lighting, good quality microphone, good quality camera. If you are a professional speaker, this is your profession. This is your livelihood, right? So I would expect a professional speaker would show up with a better setting than I have. But then I think those are table stakes. What I think some of the differentiators are is how are you going to engage the audience, especially when they're ones that it's more of the webinar view. So what are you going to do creatively if all you have is chat? How can you do some polls in chat? How can you do some things where you're really engaging the audience and helping them feel a part of it and helping them co-create the content as you go? And it's also being flexible. The days of this is my speech. It is 45 minutes. I stick to it, and you ask me 5 minutes of questions afterwards. Those days, they're going to be fading out,
Mhm.
right? Audience members are looking for authenticity. They're looking to be able to connect with the speakers. And I think they're looking for that connection more so right now because of the pandemic and because they aren't feeling those connections. They're almost relying on the speaker. So, how do you make it a little bit more personal?
Interesting. I absolutely love the idea. That was such a golden nugget about what can you do 60 days, 90 days
Mhm.
after the event. One of the things that's always driven me crazy about the conference world is that you're going to forget almost everything that you heard,
Yes.
right? And I think for me, one of the best parts about virtual is so many organizations have allowed people to go back and watch the sessions again,
Mhm.
so that you can, because you take it all in. I mean, your brain can only take so much in 8 hours, and then to be able to go back and go back to that session that you felt like that was exactly what you needed to hear, and be able
Mhm.
to go through it again. Do you think do you think that'll phase back out, or do you think that most conference organizers will be under some pressure to include that for their attendees now?
I certainly hope it won't phase out because I think, again, that's all about reinforcing the learning. Like education is amazing, but theory without implementation really doesn't move you forward. So I would hope to see more of the 30, 60, 90-day follow ups. More of the hey, you have access to the conference recordings for 30 days. Go back and watch your those ones that really resonate with you because not every session will resonate with every single person. So to your point, what are the ones that were like, oh my God, that's my aha moment? I know when I attend events, I take a ton of notes and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I walk in to my office and I'm inundated, trying to catch up, and they go in a file, right? So even
Yep.
just getting a reminder of a 30-day from a session that I attended would help me like pull it out and be like, okay, what did I say I was going to do? What am I going to do? Plus, as professional speakers, that's a way to get your name back in front of the attendees because most speakers are hired on referrals. The meeting planning industry is a very, very small community, right? When you really think about it. So when I used to hire speakers for anything that was like a critical or like a main stage keynote, I'm going to my peers. Who have you used that really blew you away but was really easy to work with, right?
Mm.
So imagine you have those references. Or when I attend events, I look for people who like they were phenomenal. And then if I get a follow up, I'm like, wow, I want them at my event.
What makes a speaker easy to work with?
Um, one being flexible, uh, I coming prepared. So what I see from a very helpful perspective, and I see this a lot with just solopreneurs in general, is I want to help you. So you want me to do a 45-minute segment? Well, here's what I can do for you. And here's 3 more hours of stuff. And here's this. But you know what? If we could just talk once a week, I could really make this even better for you. Now, the intent is to make it better. But from meeting planners' perspective, is like it's a task. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So
you've added
the
work to their plate.
yeah, the speakers that are the easiest to work with are the ones that just meet deadlines and don't require a lot of follow up. That are just helpful. I found our speakers are super helpful when we're having the conversation about, or we're having the production calls, and it's, hey, we've got this technology, this capability. We may not always have the capability that every speaker wants. So it's, okay, how can you deliver what you want using the technology that we have, instead of, no, I only use this technology and I need you to figure out how to make it work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I just wanted you to say it because I don't do this always when I say it, so they don't listen to me when I say it. But yeah, I mean, we put, because we're also a conference company, right?
Mhm.
So we do it, and I think the number one for me is deadlines,
Yes.
and not, not speakers who send over 1,700, like, each word separate in an email. So you have to kind of put 1,700 emails back together to create Humpty Dumpty again, because they couldn't say, this is what, like, here's the 3 things that are in this email for you. And then here's,
Mhm.
like, if there is a secondary email, here's the 3 things that are attached for you here. And just the benefit of clear communication and meeting
Yeah.
deadlines, how far. And what's funny is it's not even hard. And yet I feel like so many folks don't do
Uh-huh.
that, but that's just me. So what do you think in terms of, you said something earlier that I have to circle back to. The industry was decimated. That
Mhm.
means that staff numbers are down.
Mhm.
What we know from some of the Deloitte studies is this is also happening on the corporate side, where revenue is going to come back before the number of employees come back. It
Mhm.
sounds like conferences will start coming back, but they won't be fully staffed
Mhm.
to the levels they were. So number one, people are going to be doing way more with less, if that's even
Mhm.
possible. What do you have to do now to get yourself booked? How do you stand out, Mary Lou, in this world, knowing that there's probably 50% fewer
Mhm.
team members to go through speaker applications, to figure out the agenda, to get, especially as we go back? I mean, it's going to be, if it was
Mhm.
hard planning virtual events, do you know how hard it is to plan a hybrid event?
Oh,
That's
yes.
harder, right?
Yes.
So, what do speakers do now as we head into this year to really stand out?
Sure. So some things that just maybe sound simple, but I can tell, and any meeting planner can tell, when if we do a call for presentation and we just get the standard spiel, we can tell. So as simple as understanding, if you're submitting, if you're reaching out to somebody, whether it's through a call for presentations or through an email or cold call or a referral or whatever, it's understanding the business needs and talking to that potential client. What can you do for me and my customers? And just put it up front. What at the end of the day is your value to my customers? What will my customers get by me bringing you on at this event? Um, Demonstrate that you have experience in virtual and hybrid, and like I said, and I have a program where I'll give you these takeaways 30, 60, 90 days out, if you'd like. And then you can feel free to send them to your attendees, because it gets you as the meeting planner more credibility, it gets you a little more love. And I, as the speaker, am helping you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Let me ask you one more piece about this. One of this
Mhm.
is now my soapbox here. So I want to know how much is just my personal irritation versus if this in fact translates over to the conference, the planners. But when I see titles, I'm just going to pull one out of thin air, sort of like creating a highly engaged company culture,
Mhm.
or taking your people performance next level. It drives me nuts,
Yes.
because there's nothing new in the title. Like,
Mhm.
all I see is, well, no bleep Sherlock. Yes,
Yes.
like people performance, culture, all of these things that companies are talking about. But what's new here? And I think that's partly my
Exactly.
PR mind, right? Because I spent so many years in media relations where it's like, if it's not new, it's not news. I feel like titles today, conference organizers don't want a
Mhm.
canned talk that you could have given 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Am I crazy or is
Especially,
that true?
no, you're absolutely right. And that was happening pre-pandemic with the advent with the rise of YouTube. One of my most frustrating experiences, and not with an NSA member, I must say, is I hired somebody to give a speech. They were I saw their TEDx and I specifically said, don't give your TED talk because everybody can see that for free. We
Right.
talked through how they're going to customize it. They showed up on site and gave their TED talk. Like, and that happens pretty frequently. And that's frustrating from a meeting planner. If I wanted my people to see that, I would have just sent them a link. So it is just like every other profession, you have to customize your services or tailor your services. When you get into customization, there's additional charges, but each speech should be a little bit tailored. So you can use the same stories, but how do you tailor that to this audience? And when you are thinking of session titles and descriptions, what's the takeaway? What will I get by attending the session? What will my members get from attending the session? And to your point, Angelique, how is this different from every other session on, to use that example, culture?
Yep.
What's different? Why would somebody want to attend it?
Yeah, and I think it'll be really interesting to see. Like one of the things I'm looking for, one is when do I start seeing conferences putting a stake in the ground on in
Mhm,
person? There was a big one that came out. A company called ClickFunnels, which is in the digital marketing space, has
mhm,
put a stake in the ground that they're going to have their multi-thousand person conference later this year. Our Real Deal event will be in person in October. So we're starting to see in the fall people kind of
mhm,
putting a stake in the ground. I'm really curious to see um, as conference organizers are planning those events, how they change the types of topics that they put in.
mhm,
I'm really curious to see. I know for us personally, like we only want to talk about things that are going to be very actionable and sort of time
mhm,
sensitive. We're not really interested in sort of this evergreen type content
mhm,
because now people know they can just watch it online. So why do people want to come to the room? I do think, like, for me, I'm wondering, what are organizations going to do so people don't say, no, I'm just going to catch the virtual version. I
mhm,
actually want to be there on site. And until this conversation, I really hadn't thought about how the speakers play a role
mhm,
in really creating that on
mhm,
site experience that makes it worth the plane ticket, that makes it
mhm.
worth the hotel. Do you think it's worth talking about that when you're a speaker and it's a conference organizer looking at this, that I'm going to be on site and this is what we can do on site to help get people in person and not just taking the sort of, well, I'll just catch the Zoom.
100%. That's one thing that meeting planners have always struggled with, right? And then is getting people to attend. And then you throw in, you've got a hybrid option. That is a struggle. I mean, we've had people say to us, why would I go to why would I even pay to go to the virtual version when it's going to be in our online learning system in a few months, right? Well, so first, not all sessions will make it there. But to your point, from a speaker perspective, what are you going to do that really engages that audience, that makes it a benefit for you to attend in person without diminishing a takeaway from the virtual audience? So it is that line that you have to balance. For conference organizers, that's where social learning and events come in. And I use the term social learning, and I know that's probably not the correct term,
I think it's a
but
great
it's
term.
learning from your peers. You can't get that online. You can break out into virtual breakout groups 100%, and that's better than nothing, but it is not the same as being there in person.
The one
The other thing I think that will help with that, Angelique, is
Mhm.
I'm seeing more and more conferences when when COVID first hit, a lot of people priced their virtual events really cheap. And now they're realizing, holy cow, it is so expensive to run a virtual event. And they're starting to decrease the differential between the in person and the virtual.
Yep.
So for us, we went to market last influence with a lower price point. We knew that. We did that intentionally, and we did that because our industry was decimated. And
Mm,
we felt we, in order to be congruent with our values and our mission, we needed to go as like registration fee as low as we could go so
makes
that we
sense.
could help professional speakers pivot and adjust to the new reality. So now we're starting to adjust our pricing to be more congruent with the value that we offer. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that's something I do think organizations struggled with that a little
Mhm.
bit, partly because there had always been a perception that if something was online, that somehow it had lower value, which of
Right.
course that isn't true. We actually had one person. I think the craziest thing that happened to us when we moved from in person to virtual, because our event was scheduled to be in June, and of course,
Ooh.
obviously, things went to heck in a handbasket in March. So we bumped first to October in person, and then that, we weren't able to do October in person,
Mhm.
so we went to the full on virtual conference. One person, actually, only one person complained, and they wrote in and they said, "I would never pay a dime for a virtual conference." And that was a really sort of interesting, like, we didn't respond, like, I don't
Mhm.
know how to respond to that. I mean, I just don't. But I think there was this, like, weird mindset around virtual somehow not being
Yes.
as valuable as in person. But I think folks actually found there were some benefits that were surprising to virtual, that were great. And then there's also, though, something about one thing I don't get from virtual events that I get from in person events is a certain feeling. I don't know how to
Mhm.
explain it, but there is something when you're in the container physically of the event that
Mhm.
shifts for you. And you're able to disconnect from the dishes and the laundry and all the other stuff. And you're really able to be in there. So I hope that's one of the things that brings people back. Um, Speaking of bringing people back, you have a busy year for NSA. Actually, before I
Yes.
ask you that, I do want to just say there are tons of comments in here. Folks are absolutely loving this advice. Thank you, Sally, for saying that. I agree. I think this is incredible advice that Mary Lou is sharing with all of you. So thank you for that. And if you guys have questions for Mary Lou, please feel free to share those. I'm going to start taking some questions here. What are some of the things? One of the things I have admired about NSA this year and all of last year, especially, was that you guys have really been at the forefront of everything that's happening, trying to keep your speakers
Mhm.
flexible, agile, in the right mindset. The sky is not falling. We all need to
Mhm.
be, as flexible as Gumby here, but keep going, keep diversifying. We're all going to get through
Mhm.
this. You really led the way for your members. What are some of the things you guys have coming up this year, to continue to help folks? Because I actually think coming out of this is going to be more confusing than heading
Mhm.
into it personally.
Agreed. So, over the last year, we really beefed up our digital resources. So, like when COVID first hit, we took that step back and focused first on like what is the value we provide to our members and how can we provide that to them now. And so we got a bunch of free resources out there. Like I said, we really were interested in helping them save their businesses. So we've continued to expand more the digital offerings, and this year we're going to continue on that. So we're going to have new ways for customers and members to engage with us, including two new monthly series. One focused on be a better speaker, so the art of speaking, and one focused on the business of speaking. We're going to have a lot more digital resources. We're having a new simplified membership model that allows members to engage with us however much they want to engage with us. And we're also making it easier for people who are just getting started in the speaking or are thinking about becoming a speaker to engage with us. So we'll have an opportunity for them to learn where we have a lot of free resources. Subscribe is where you're really thinking about becoming a professional speaker. And then membership is when you are serious, you're all in, you're committed, you are a professional speaker. Um, and we're going to be launching some new peer connection groups where our members can connect with people that are at the same business level, because you go through the same ups and downs and the same cycles, right? And there's that certain pace where you need to start adding employees. How do you add employees? Do you do a W-2 versus a 1099? All of the stuff with the PPE and do we qualify and healthcare and all that. Those are some of the discussions that happen in those communities. And then we'll be launching a new website April 5th. We're very excited about that. That will make it a lot easier. And we've got Influence. Our annual conference is July 10th through 12th in Las Vegas. It will be hybrid, but the theme is radical relevance. So this is all about how do you stay relevant? So we're learning from people that have been relevant for decades. So how do you stay relevant? What do you, how do you not jump on fads and trends? And how do you determine what you need to invest in order to stay relevant? As well as people that have created have gone viral on social. How did they do that? So of course there's sales and marketing, and then there's also authenticity. Again, that's something that audience members are really looking for because they're looking to connect with their speakers.
Man, I don't know if it was Rhett or you or the team that came up with that theme of radical relevance, but that might just be my two favorite words I've heard in the last year. That is that to me, that idea of radical relevance is, oh my gosh, that is a $1 billion idea right there. And that theme alone, I think, hopefully will change people's perceptions about just how relevant they need to be to the audience, to the organization, to the conference. That it can't be something that, if you were giving this presentation 5 years ago, that is not radical relevant. Frankly, if you were giving a presentation a year and a half ago, prior to COVID, it probably isn't radically relevant anymore. That is absolutely so insightful. I absolutely love that. Let me ask you this. When do you think it's summer? Because your event's in July. We actually have a small retreat for our clients next month in April. We have about 25 clients coming to South Florida. This is our first time, Mary Lou, that we're going to see people in a room. I'm still a little I'm processing that right now, that I'm going to have clients in a room. We're going to be double masked and all of that good stuff. But do you think it'll be this summer when we start to really see some sizable events back on the calendar and people's butts on planes heading to them?
I think there's going to be a couple of things. First of all, like we talked about, the vaccinations and the availability of vaccinations plays a really large part in people feeling comfortable. And what we're talking now, I think, is the psychology about people feeling comfortable to go back to conferences, in addition to making sure that the virus stays under control. So right now we're in that weird point where we've got to keep our eye on CDC guidelines. We've got to do local governor guidelines, county guidelines. Then some hotels are doing some different things. And then you've got your user base, right? So is your user base a little older? Maybe they're not as comfortable going out sooner. What I'm seeing trend-wise, or what I'm hearing trend-wise from the hotel industry, is they're starting to see a pickup in RFPs toward the fall of this year. And they anticipate getting back to 2009 levels by 2023. I think it's going to be sooner than that. Especially with the latest news on the vaccine.
Yeah.
So I do think by summer we'll start seeing some events. I think one of the things that just absolutely killed meetings was when the large companies like Microsoft and all those came out and said, we're not doing any meetings for another year. Now, part of that was very smart PR on their part, because it was cost cutting. And it was a way to really position cost cutting. But it was also because we didn't know what was happening with the virus. So when those same companies that came out and put a stop to meetings, when they start holding some meetings, I think that will help people feel a little more comfortable as well too. And I think media coverage that was a little less fear-based would be helpful. And really recognizing that just because our workforce environment might stay virtual for a long time doesn't mean it's because of the virus, or doesn't mean we shouldn't have events. It's because people have learned, hey, I can be more productive if I'm in the office 3 days a week and I'm working from home 2 days a week, right? So I know that's a long-winded answer.
No, that's an excellent point. I think that's an excellent point. And actually, Naomi, I don't know that I understand your question. Do you mean where to post your speaking opportunities? If you can say a little bit more about that, Naomi, I want to make sure we get to your question. I think that's very interesting what you just shared, Mary Lou, particularly the piece about the corporations. So
Mhm.
much of the event industry is driven by the corporate mid market sector and them being willing to send their employees. It's one of the indicators we've been watching for is in terms of when are they going to sort of loosen up travel restrictions. It's too soon right now.
Mhm.
It's not yet. But I will tell everyone this. Every single recession over the last 30 years has predicted that business travel won't come back.
Exactly.
They have said that for, even when the top technology was teleconferencing and the Citrix platform for webinars, they were saying we weren't
Yes.
going to go back to in person. And so
Mhm.
every single time the business travel ends up coming back not only as strong, but often doubly strong as what it was. Meanwhile, there's technologies coming out. This total rabbit hole here. But I mean, in another 10, 15 years, we're going to be able to get from like New York to London in 3 hours. I mean,
Mhm.
the air travel is changing. So it's coming back. It's coming back.
Yes.
Everybody, every time they try to say something's dead, I just sort of laugh and say, yeah, famous last words, right? But we are really accelerating the financial news this last 2 weeks has been phenomenal.
Mhm.
70%, if you guys didn't see this, 70% of CEOs that Deloitte surveyed said that their revenue numbers their revenue is either already back or will be back, never dropped, is already returned, or will be returned by the end of June. So, I mean, I think we're really going to see. I'm with you. I think it's this
Mhm.
fall is when we're really going
Mhm.
to see the big return. I don't see another question here. So, with that in mind, for those who want to connect with NSA, Mary Lou, they want to take advantage of everything that you all are doing there to help speakers be more successful in not just booking speaking opportunities, but being a better speaker and running a
Mhm.
better speaking business. What are some of the ways that they can connect with you?
So they can connect with us online at nsaspeaker.org. And again, check back in April when we have a new website that'll make finding some information a lot easier. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram would be where
Awesome.
the best people follow. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, I hope I see a lot of people at the event in Las Vegas. That'll probably be my first trip to Vegas since prior to the pandemic. So it's already on my calendar. I certainly hope to be out there that week. I'm sort of chomping at the
Yes.
bit to be back on an airplane. Personally and back at events because they're one of my favorite things to do as a business owner, to attend, to speak, and to host.
Mhm.
So hopefully we'll see lots of folks there. Do you have a sense of when registration will open for your July? Do you have any anticipation of that?
Yep, we just opened it. We opened that at our winter conference, and now we're going to be doing a big general push over the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. So then you guys have no excuse. You can already put Vegas for July on your calendar. I certainly hope to see all of you there. Mary Lou, I hope to see you and Rhett in person there as well. The amount of sort of golden
Mhm.
nuggets that you dropped throughout this session today, I am so, so appreciative. For anyone who did listen, there's no way that their applications for speaking aren't going to stand out above the rest if they implement what you told them to do and make sure that they're an easy to work with speaker who gets invited
Mhm.
back and gets referrals again and again. Thank you for being so generous with all of that information.
Well, thank you, Angelique, and thank you for all you're doing for the industry as well too. We really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. All right, everybody. So that's Mary Lou Peck from the National Speakers Association. It was such an honor to have her here today. If you guys have not been to a National Speakers Association conference, I personally recommend it. As someone who speaks, I do. Pop into various sessions when I'm at an event. The NSA events are just, I mean, they're so incredibly well run, and the content is just it's incredible. It's just absolutely nothing but positive things to say about their conferences. It's definitely worth your time if you are looking to book more speaking, if whether you're a professional speaker, you're someone who does it for your business, the amount of knowledge and insights and actionable strategies that you gain from their sessions is just bar none. So thank you so much for joining us. As just a quick programming reminder, we are off next week for a much needed spring break, but we will be back the following Wednesday as we talk with one of our clients who has really transformed the way that his local market is collaborating with one another in the relationships, and how he is building relationships right in his backyard is absolutely phenomenal what he has done. So do not miss that episode. Talk about actionable information. I promise it will be lots of it. So until then, everyone, this is Angelique signing off. Have a great rest of your day.